Hi guys, Simon Trezellian, and welcome back to the Lockdown Chronicles. Obviously, there's a lot of talk today, um, just about the relationship, I think, in America and probably in other parts of the world as well, in regards to how we treat others and how specifically we treat people of colour. I saw yesterday that there was this campaign of Blackout Tuesday where everyone just blacked out everything and didn't post on Facebook and blacked out websites. And I got to say, I couldn't see the point in that. I understand that the blackout thing it's clever, but it did nothing. That's the whole point. People did nothing. And the whole problem is that for the last 200 years, save that of the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, people have done nothing. And I don't think that's the way to go. So you've got to do something positive. Just doing something that's negative or closing down the narrative is really not going to help anybody. So I had an idea today. And I thought, wouldn't it be much more positive if everyone, because it's about racial divide at the moment, people are looking at the division of what separates us. I actually had to look at it, and I did some soul searching on this. Because I think I've joined in that division in the past. I think a lot of people have. A lot of people have been guilty of that, of this complicit element of at least not standing up and not being vocal enough. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we started to share stories of how people of colour have positively impacted your life? I think that's a far more effective and far more positive viewpoint, as opposed to talking about the problems. Let's talk about some solutions. So I grew up in a place called Cow Plain, just north of Portsmouth in England. It was a very rural, small town. It wasn't even a town, it was a village when he had 3 shops. Consequently, during that time, there were no people of colour. Okay, it was just a normal white Christian community, and it stayed that way for a long, long time. So that's how I grew up. I never even saw anyone. I never went to the inner city. I never ever saw anyone of colour. I had no interaction with anyone of colour. And then when I was 9 years old, my parents, in order just to give us a little bit of extra income, we used to take people in from time to time, mostly students from other countries who would come like for a month during the summer to learn English. And we found that it was quite a good cultural thing as well. They'd bring these French students over and, they would speak English to us. And gotta say, I didn't have a particularly good experience with those French students. But anyway, that's another thing. But at one time, we had this opportunity to host some choir members from the Bel Canto Choir in Washington, D.C. It was this American choir, school choir, that was coming over and doing concerts around. My parents, put in for this and said, we'll take a student. And we got the letter back saying, you're going to have this student called Carol Washington. Okay, so my parents, got the room all cleaned up, put flowers in there, made it all nice and all this type of thing. Anyway, so 24 hours before we were going to be greeting Carol Washington, we got a phone call from the agency saying, well, actually, it's not Carol Washington. There's a typo. It's Carl Washington. We thought, okay, so that's not a problem. So we went to the meeting hall where all of these students were coming in, and they were pairing them off with the different families. And then they called out Carl Washington. And then, to my surprise, this big black guy stands up. And then he stood up again. And then he seemed to stand up again. He was just like the biggest person that I'd ever seen in my life. He was like 6'6", I think he was, 6'7". Huge guy. And he wasn't one of the students. He was actually the truant officer. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a truant officer. But so he was the truant officer for the school. And he just came over and said, "Hi," in a big booming voice. "My name's Carl Washington." He shook my hand, and my little hands like disappeared into his. And anyway, he stayed with us for like 2 weeks, I think. And I got to tell you, I mean, he was a frightening person because he was just so big. But he was also the school coach for the football team. So I had this Subbuteo set, which is these little figures that you used to flick around and all this. And he was showing me how to make, how to do American football with his Subbuteo set. He's going, "These guys line up there," and he goes, "Those guys, this is the offense, and these guys come here, and these guys," and he's smashing these figures together and showing me how American football worked. And he would take me out because my parents were much older than the other parents around because I was adopted. And he took me out, and he was playing ball, and he was really very much a father figure. And this was my first experience of actually dealing with any person of colour. And right from the start, I see he had this presence. He was big, he was black, he was scary looking, but he had a heart of gold. And I always remember that. And it's really interesting because, what you perceive to be and what the actual is sometimes very, very different. And if you're open to not making those judgments first off, then you can have a really positive experience. I mean, I could have run from the hills and hid under the bed and not had any interaction with him at all, and I'd have probably been quite justified, given his size and my relative size. But he was a beautiful, beautiful soul, and I always remember him. I mean, we've got to remember this is back in, God, when would this be? This would have been 1968, 69, so it's a long, long time ago. But I still remember him. I still remember his name. How many people have I met since that time? And I don't remember who they are. But this guy had such a positive effect on me that I remember his name, from all those years ago. And it was interesting because the next year we had our first black community member come in. And he moved in down the street as a boy, exactly the same age as me. And his name was Malcolm Constantine. And, we became friends. And just over that summer, it was the summer of '69. Sounds like a Bryan Adams song. But anyway, he came in and, we were just kids together. We ran around the woods and we, did all sorts of things that kids do and got into a bit of trouble and, all that type of thing. Anyway, so we then went back to school after the summer. And it was that summer that my parents told me, because I was 10 years old, it was that summer my parents told me that I was adopted. And they were really good with it. They were really kind, and they sat me down and said, "Look, there's a reason why we're much older than the other parents." And they told me what adoption was, and they told me that my original mother, wasn't able to look after me, and that she gave me up, and now I was with them. And the way that they communicated it was really nice. They said, "Look, you're special. You were chosen. You didn't just come along." And that we love you, and and all of this, and I accepted that because my experience with them was that of love, So I was feeling actually quite good about this, and then I went to school, and of course, you got something new to say to your friends, and I said, "Hey, I've got some news. This is me, and guess what? I'm adopted, and my parents aren't my real parents, but." This is it, and I'm special. And they went, no, you're not special at all. You were given up. Someone didn't want you. And there's a word for people like you as well. It's called a bastard. So you're a bastard, and that was it. And it reverberated around the playground that, now I'm like Simon the Bastard. And it was hurtful. It was very, very hurtful. To the point where I just said I actually felt betrayed then by my parents. Betrayed by the world, in fact, and I ran away from home. Not for very long, but I ran away from home. And the thing was that Malcolm Constantine as well got the same stuff, because we had bonded as well, because we were both adoptees, and we understood what that was. But there was something different with him, because where ours could be, when I was being called a bastard because he was black, there was obviously an addition to that word bastard, and he got that. And it allowed us a bonding, but it obviously put a wedge between some of my friends and him, because now I'm supporting him, because he's my friend, and because he's a fellow adoptee, and I'm now having to protect him physically because he was black. So I thought I had it bad because I was just having to deal with this whole bastard thing. But he had it worse, because they couldn't identify me as a bastard because I was white and everyone else was white, but they could identify him because he was the only black kid in a school of 1,200 kids. So that gave me a real distinction as well, as to, he couldn't just take that off. That was with him forever. And he had to live with that. And, as I think, during the 60s, as the community started to have a little bit more diversity, obviously it would have got a little easier. But for that period of time, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. And of course, at that stage, you just had all of the the civil disorder stuff that was going around in the world. So it was becoming very much a talking point. But it remained a talking point, not an action point. So fast forward on then to 20 years old. So I'm 20 years old, and I'm serving in Northern Ireland, and I'm an undercover operator at 20 years old. So I have to go out on the streets of Londonderry, and I was conducting an operation there, and they said, right, we're going to give you a group of soldiers that are going to protect you. So if you get into any problems, you will extract, and they'll extract you. So I was doing my stuff, and we got into some trouble. So I had to extract pretty quickly. And these guys, I think there was 6 of them, and they were from the Snatch Squad, as they used to call it, from the 2RRF, which is the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, which was a Birmingham regiment. And it was a regiment that was almost exclusively of colour. And the Snatch Squad were chosen because they were the fastest runners. So these are the track and field team of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. All of them were black, And so they gave me these guys to look after me. So anyway, as we were trying to get back, I got taken by the crowd, and I was in a fetal position. I was just trying to hold on to my weapon because I knew if I lost my pistol, they would just shoot me. So I was taking kicks to the head, I was taking kicks to the body. They were trying to drag me away, which would have seriously meant my death. It was a very bad situation. But these guys came back for me, and they all sprinted in. They were firing rubber bullets. The first thing I knew was the guy that was on top of me, that was trying to choke me, got hit by a rubber bullet. And they're not like the rubber bullets you see these days. These things are like huge, almost like dildos. When they hit you at 100 miles an hour, you know about it. And this guy was taken off me with one of these, and there were rounds going all over the place, and they came in and started, really taking out some of the rioters that were trying to kill me. So I ended up with like 8 broken ribs, smashed in face, blood all over the place. But I still managed to hold on to my fingers were almost like breaking because I was holding on to the butt of my gun, so it couldn't be taken. And eventually they just picked me up, and like between 2 of them, and I just got dragged through the streets of Londonderry and ingloriously put into the back of an armoured Land Rover and whisked away to safety. And I was looking at this, and of course I'm sitting in the back of the Rover with them, and they're all like looking at me, and these big black faces which have just saved my life. And yeah, it was. I didn't even have time to thank him. Yeah, it was an interesting time because, you know, you're there in this like peacekeeping mode and all this type of stuff. But what I did look at, and I don't even remember the guy's name, but you know, at the end when they dropped me off, he just shook my hand, and then he just like stepped out. They were going back to the riot, and he had blood. Obviously, he had taken a wound, and he had blood that was running all the way down his face, and I had blood that was running all down my face as well. And it was really bizarre because there's me, this white guy, you know, and there's him, this black guy, and the one thing between us was the blood, and the blood was the same color, and that was a big distinction for me, you know, and you know, in some ways, in actual ways, I owe those guys my life. So whoever they are, thank you for that, because that allowed me to continue on and serve. And I always remember that this is something that actually happened in my life, and you know, it was a brutal time all round. So those are my stories. I've actually never told those stories, and certainly not in this type of environment. I've told the riot one, I think, privately, but I just wanted to get those out there today so that people could see that there are some positive interactions, and I'm sure that we all have that. And if we are able to share those positive interactions with people, there is more of a coming together. There is more of a gratitude for the interactions, and for the addition into your life of people of colour, to start to see that there is more of a unity as opposed to more of a division. The more unity we can experience during this time is going to be better for everyone. So that's my confessional today. I would engage you to do similar. Just find someone and just tell them a story where someone of colour positively impacted your life. It just adds to the love in the world. So this is Simon Trezelyan, out to you.